White Claw, I can't stop. Fuck around, make my 40 pop.
Boruto episode 188 review. Alright guys, in this episode we got exactly what we signed up for and arguably even more than what we signed up for. The first thing that I do want to talk about is Kawaki finally being introduced in terms of an actual character in this episode. He actually got up, he actually walked around, he actually talked to us. Kawaki is exactly what we thought he was. Kawaki coming to this series, we kind of thought that he would pretty much interpret that Sasuke role, that dark emo type of character, and from what we've seen when he was interacting with Team 7, that is exactly what we've seen. And the episode didn't necessarily just have Kawaki being completely mean and being an emo guy for no reason. They actually showed us the actual backstory of Kawaki in the same episode where we got to see the personality of Kawaki, which gave us a lot of background upon why Kawaki is the way that he is. Now the first scene that I definitely want to talk about is the scene where he first met Team 7. This scene right here was definitely a very interesting one to say the least. Alright, so first things first, we get Boruto and everybody else basically questioning Kawaki and Kawaki questioning them. One of the very interesting things that we did see in this episode that a lot of manga readers I'm pretty sure found very interesting as well is that this episode pretty much made it seem like Kawaki can actually fly. Us manga readers to the fact of if Kawaki can actually fly, it's not necessarily set in stone either. But in this episode right here, more than in the manga scene, it definitely looks like Kawaki has the ability to fly. Another thing is the fact that Boruto tried to calm Kawaki down by showing Kawaki the karma seal. Now, when Kawaki woke up, he was visibly and of course he was very upset, and it looked like he was extremely tired as well. Kawaki kind of thought that everybody in Team 7 was a part of the Kado organization, and to basically calm Kawaki down, Boruto showed him the karma seal. Now this right here definitely was not a very good idea. It's very cool just to see contrasting reactions from the people in the Kado organization and the reactions from Kawaki himself. Kawaki was pretty much certain, 100% certain, that Boruto was a part of the Kado organization. Kawaki thought that Boruto was going to be a tracker from that point on, but Delta and Kashinkoji in this particular situation, they were absolutely surprised and they were absolutely stunned as well, and Kashinkoji himself was kind of wondering how two karma seals would actually interact with each other. That right there could possibly symbolize that he never really seen two people with a karma seal in the same room. Now it might just be a situation where they kind of keep the people with the karma seals and the Kado organization kind of separate, and this might be the first time that Kashinkoji actually seen something like this. But because Kashinkoji kind of reacted in a way, it does make me question, does other people in the Kado organization actually have a karma seal? One thing that we do know for sure is that Jigen himself has the karma seal, the leader of the Kado organization, but are there going to be other people in the Kado organization that has the karma seal? That right there is definitely going to be an interesting thing to actually find out. Now outside of that, one of the things that the anime owners were super excited for was a potential fight versus Boruto and Kawaki, and it seems like that right there is going to have to hold off, man, because Kawaki is now going to end up fighting an outsider of the Kado organization. I do want to point out, a fight versus Boruto and Kawaki, this right here has actually been teased by the Boruto writers, so it's not necessarily just an unfathomable opinion that a lot of the anime owners had. There was literally a 1-minute clip of Boruto and Kawaki going at it before all of this even came out, so it's just very crazy just seeing how Boruto isn't necessarily going to be the first enemy that Kawaki fights in this series. So now the battle versus Garo was basically set up at the very beginning of this episode. This right here was something I was super surprised with. We've seen the Boruto anime add a lot of things in terms of adapting the Boruto manga, and this right here was nothing new, and I definitely did like this change as well. Now the full backstory of Garo is still completely unknown. We don't know what village he's from. We don't even know if he was an actual ninja before he actually did join the Kado organization, and one of the most important things is that we don't necessarily know the experiment that Garo went through, mainly because the experiment that Garo went through, I'm pretty sure a lot of other people in the Kado organization, or a lot of the outsiders in the Kado organization, potentially went through the same exact thing as well. One thing that I definitely do want to point out is that I'm pretty sure that we're going to eventually see this sort of experiment with Garo. Us manga readers, we understand that we're going to get to see the experiment that Kawaki went through later on, but the experiment that the outers went through, I'm pretty sure it's going to be something very different from the experiment that Kawaki himself went through. Now I'm not going to lie, the most entertaining thing about Garo's backstory in this episode wasn't necessarily anything about Garo at all. It was actually Kawaki. This is actually the first time that we did see the karma seal activate in the anime and be used for attacking. Of course, we've seen Boruto activate the karma seal in the last episode, but Boruto didn't necessarily attack anybody in the last episode. In this episode right here, Kawaki activated the karma seal, and what was very interesting is the fact that Kashinkoji was there as well, and Kashinkoji was there with Amada, and of course Amada kind of tried to stop Garo from basically hurting Kawaki, but it seemed like Kashinkoji had a basically forward-thinking idea. He himself, I don't know, maybe this was because he wanted Kawaki to die because he's seen the future, because Kashinkoji might be the rat? I have absolutely no idea, us manga readers know. But regardless, because Garo pushed Kawaki so much, Kawaki then activated the karma seal and literally blew Garo's jaw off. Now, right before Kawaki actually did wake up in the scene with Team 7, we kind of got to see Kawaki's backstory. Now, I do want to point out they cut a lot of stuff out of Kawaki's backstory, and I don't necessarily mind it that bad. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, man, because if you're going to cut some things out of Kawaki's backstory, you have to add it with something else, and it has to be something very important. And I think Gara's backstory is definitely something that we can possibly look to as being something that they did kind of cut Kawaki's backstory out and actually add that. The thing about Kawaki's backstory is that it wasn't necessarily anything too crazy. Kawaki's backstory in this episode in terms of substance didn't necessarily cut much out. In the Boruto manga, Kawaki's father was portrayed as being a more cold-hearted character and a more self-centered character, but regardless, building the character of Kawaki's father in hindsight isn't necessarily that important in conjunction to a scene where we see Kawaki literally activate his karma seal and blow Garo's jaw off an outsider of the Kado organization. So obviously I'm going to definitely accept that trade-off in scenes just off of the rip. Now, towards the end of the episode, we seen Kawaki and Garo kind of size each other up, and we actually did see Kawaki kind of attack Garo. Now, during this time in the Boruto manga, just this tiny scene in the Boruto manga, remind you guys, this last scene was very accurately adapted into the Boruto manga, and one of the manga readers did actually do at this particular point. We automatically tried to power scale exactly how strong Kawaki can potentially be. One of the things that we did think that was very noticeable is the fact that Mitsuki actually noted that Kawaki was fast, and I kind of thought to myself that the Boruto writers did that for an actual reason. Everybody going 100%, now it might not be that minimum because Boruto has the karma seal, but everybody going 100%, Mitsuki is the fastest character in Team 7, and of course we understand that Mitsuki doesn't necessarily have a lot of speaking rules, and for Mitsuki to actually comment on how fast Kawaki is, that right there definitely meant something to me. And not only that, this right here was weakened Kawaki. Kawaki actually confirmed that he was weakened, and Garo actually confirmed that he was weakened in this episode as well. That right there just gets me super hyped to see exactly how good 100% Kawaki can actually be. Now, not only that, we actually seen Kawaki grow a sword out of his arm. This right here was something that we kind of anticipated from the actual snippet that I did talk about earlier in this video, where we did see Kawaki kind of grow something out of his arm. Now, that right there was super weird. It did kind of look completely different from what we did see in the Boruto anime in terms of design wise, but this right here wasn't necessarily anything too crazy. When this right here did actually come out in the Boruto manga, a lot of people kind of compared it to what Jugo has in his arm. The difference though is the fact that Jugo can form his arm to make multiple things. Kawaki hasn't necessarily shown that ability just as of yet, so we can't necessarily make that complete comparison as of right now anime wise. Overall, it was very interesting seeing that Kawaki had 100% confidence fighting an outsider of the Kado organization. Again, we've seen how strong one outsider can potentially be, and Al, who is actually retired for 16 years. Now, one of the interesting scenes that I was definitely looking forward to in this episode was the meeting between Delta and Jigen, and it really didn't necessarily have anything to do about what they were talking about, but during this discussion, Delta was so mad that she basically broke the table, and we got to see a bit of Jigen's ability in this episode. He pretty much made a whole new table out of thin air. Now, we know it was a brand new table minimum because the last table, it was still there, so it's not like Jigen did any sort of time travel or anything like that. This right here is completely different and completely new from what we did see ever in the Naruto series, and I'm super excited to see exactly what Jigen has in store for us in the future. But regardless, I think this episode was definitely a very good episode. It was definitely everything that we thought it was going to be, and it kind of overperformed, especially seeing the new backstory of Garo, and it pretty much puts a lot of new stock into the fight that we're going to see in Kawaki versus Garo. Even though a lot of people might actually wish that we would have seen Boruto versus Kawaki, I think as of right now, a better matchup would definitely be Garo versus Kawaki, because in my opinion, Boruto would probably get washed right now. But it's been your boy Baara B, and we out.
It's a knife.